But I think this would be some person sitting here, right?
Chris, would you
Oh,
ask
that's
to
just
provide
the.
on YouTube?
We are now live on YouTube, just for everyone's information here.
Appreciate it.
So you're aware.
Good, thank you.
Where are the candidates? Are they here?
One of them is back there. The other one is not here yet.
Can you make sure to let the candidate know
I will do it right now.
about that when
I'm gonna do it right now.
and when they arrive? Yeah, just so folks know, we don't want to be rude, folks. All right.
If we're seeing it's okay. I was thinking you're likely to get feedback issues because you're going to have people with their back to the speaker, which means the mic is pointing right at the speaker.
I don't have enough room. I didn't realize I needed that in the shot. I'm not. Where are the candidates sitting? Are they sitting in this chair?
I assume that
Joe? Are the candidates sitting in this chair?
probably
These three? One is the moderator. One
Well,
is
because this is probably going to be mic running level.
Oh, okay.
I would assume so. You probably sit but
No, it's okay. I'm just wondering for camera. Can you put your hand on the right one, the last one? Okay.
I think it's this one.
Okay, then I think we're fine.
Okay. You can, like I said, you can probably get away with backing up the road if you need to. But,
Yeah. Okay. The problem is I'll be crammed.
no, I mean like around that to like
Oh, you mean another row?
to here.
I already feel like I'm making such a imposition on everybody. Okay, I think we're good. That looks good to me.
Sounds good. I didn't bring a stand, but I do have a phone if you want another video feed. Just take something back and forth too.
I don't have another stand.
Yeah, well, you should have brought something. But...
So where did you get your credits from?
I did most of my credits at
This is all locked. This is locked. This is charged. This is ready. Oh, I don't have the settings done.
Via online university.
Okay.
It's kind of interesting. They don't do any interactive. It's all. So I'm starting to look up concepts.
Yeah, I get like
I'm gonna sit down for a bit and stop hyperventilating.
That's a good idea. It's all okay. It'll all work out.
So my moderator up here and candidates in these three.
Yeah, we're
Those three.
So we're gonna.
We have two candidates.
We have two candidates, and we're gonna, once the other one gets here, we're gonna ask him whether he wants to sit or they want to hop up.
If they hop up, it's better because we only have the one microphone. Because they brought the wrong goddamn cable.
That's great.
Who brings two cables?
So so are you going to be this far in the seat then to monitor level? Can you change something on the
I
fly?
can't do that yet.
Probably wise to have somebody sitting there, just in case.
And then just like the practicality of them popping up is wonderful.
It's a.
Just in terms of TV. Are you going to be like following them, or should
No.
they should stay on the screen the whole time?
I think I haven't decided.
Okay.
Since we have this widescreen, but it is much lower quality, I could.
I think that we can make it so that they stay in that field of view or whatever.
This one is good. Yeah, they're definitely.
That one will cover everybody.
Yeah.
So check it out. So imagine that they're like they're sitting down here.
Yeah.
And then it's their turn. They walk around and they have the microphone and they'll probably stand around.
Oh, you don't think they're gonna stand at the podium?
They might. I don't know.
Well, if they can't walk around the venue if they want to be in the shot. They can stay. They can stay. I think the plan was they talk on the
The more the
podium.
better, I guess.
I mean, or behind that line. I mean,
Yeah, I don't think they're going to come out here.
yeah.
Like that, but I think like
I think if you just tell them to stay. Better. They can come. Well, why don't we practice? Why don't you step closer this way, and I'll tell you when you're out of the shot.
about things. There's all these things. That
Yeah, you're in the shot perfectly.
Yeah. Okay. So
Go that way.
yeah. So more things about things.
You can go all the way. So that's the farthest they can go. After that, I wouldn't be able to see them. And on this edge, try this side. Step. A little bit before. Right there. Yeah. Right after the podium, they're out. So they can go as far as the podium and as far as.
This thing rolls too, by the way.
Let's not move it. Yeah, let's move it. But as far as this table, and as far as the podium, so tell them they can stand here if they really want.
Yeah, they can stand.
Yeah.
Mine did stand, so I'm just gonna go ahead and set up my phone for
Great.
an extra.
Always good to have backup. Yeah.
Question for you, if you're gonna be the one doing some editing to put this stuff together, the camera app that I usually use on my phone, I have set up to shoot an S-Log.
Oh,
Do you
okay.
care if I do that, or do you want me to like not try and do that and just,
That's like a much bigger file.
it comes out here on the phone. It's a different color, so you get a little bit more bandwidth out of the color. So you see, you kind of get that sort of washed out look until you color correct it.
For me,
it's a log curve, so you actually get more.
For me, a simpler file is better.
Yeah, no,
If not-
I could just do it with a straight built-in video camera.
If possible, but it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, just because you tend not to blow out highlights and stuff quite as easily.
Right.
Doing it that way.
Oh, really? Well, there you go.
Look, we get to the next one. Hurry.
But if they go past that, they'll be out of the shot.
Yeah, so we're doing your real college.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I live 5 minutes.
No, he's talking about Kirsten.
Oh, you're talking about the
Sorry.
1080p at 30 frames.
Perfect.
Normally, I actually like to wait 24 frames. It's better with this camera.
Okay.
you know, you can see it now.
Probably because I mostly used to see movies.
Sorry, I missed that.
One gentleman, so Jake, you and Rex are going to sit with these two. Okay.
Mike, slides over when they're up.
They're not up. I'm having.
We'll see how this goes.
Connected to the Wi-Fi here.
Yeah, we got somebody from.
Oh, yeah, no, I got that.
I thought she said it was Zoom. She didn't give a report.
Okay, so
Are we using these seats?
Three, all three.
Oh, we're using all three?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
okay, so, all right.
Yep, this is her report.
Yeah, tomorrow. At 1 o'clock. Yeah, we'll be there. Yeah. Is there something you like?
So, I don't think this will reach your computer though.
No, but how we're going to change the slide.
I think that's the thing that.
Reposition the table right here. Or you need to just all we need to do is prune this table. Oh, you can just put your computer on a chair. I'll get a chair.
Yeah, you know, better have it not need it, you know, right?
I had to talk to my computer. In fact, I don't talk to you. I didn't know. I didn't know if they were copy or, yeah, so I just, I mean, I knew something was in their mouth. I just had yeah, they were very good. They couldn't be more cables or here, whatever. Okay. That's how you feel.
Hey there.
That's a real yeah, that's a good.
For Wes?
And that's what I need to see you again. Thank you, sir.
No, I know, I'm not gonna cover that.
Yeah, I got yourself. Yeah. Well, so we're flying to London.
Make it at 8 o'clock at night. I don't care. But yes, young people too.
No, I don't know.
It's not nonstop. You gotta go from Norway to,
Just having the coffee.
Stockholm. Stay the night there. Stockholm, London to LA.
Yeah, I was ready. Whenever I know more.
But you know, we got good seats, so.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah, a lot of sitting. And I always bring up.
I don't know why they're not around.
I mean, Mike's the vice president, first vice president. My last I mean, I don't know.
You know how that works.
But I'm really.
All right.
It says decline. It says decline.
He does like to cook. Loreno is nice to meet you. This is my husband Wes. I grew up about 35 minutes. Because I asked him, because when I read his profile, so when I met him, I said, okay, I go, podcast. Oh my God, oh yeah. Yeah, we're up on Sunrise and Wilmot. We're not far. And how are you guys? Oh, you're running. Oh, you're the guy. Okay. Oh, I didn't think you were.
No signal.
Promise me this giant thing. Can you help us?
Where's Joe?
Welcome, welcome, everyone. Okay, let's have a seat. The candidates are finding their seats. And they have to arm wrestle for the position. That's a joke. I'm Joe Danishevsky, the current elected president of Democrats of Greater Tucson. I want to thank you all for taking time out of your weekend to attend this important debate between our two candidates for the nomination of the Democratic Party to the office of Pima County Supervisor for District 1, Rex Scott and Jake Martin. The winner will face the nominee of the Republican Party for this general election. A special thank you to our host, L Offices, for providing this lovely space. The L Offices welcome you to their central area location at Williams Center. They proudly support local business owners through flex office space and affordable event space. Whenever you're looking for a dynamic workspace or seeking the perfect venue to host your next event, their diverse offerings cater to your needs. Please visit us at theloffices.com. That's THE, the letter L, offices.com. Sincerest thanks from all of us at the DGT.org, the Democrats of Greater Tucson, and Tucson Agenda for the L Offices for providing this wonderful event space for the benefit of our community. And a thank you to all the attendees today, especially our Democratic allies and champions. We want to thank those who step up with voluntary contributions to support this event. We'd like to acknowledge Ms. Lorraine Otis for her very generous donation as a Democratic champion. Thank you so much, Lorraine. Thanks to Mr. Scott and Mr. Martin for working so accommodatingly with Democrats of Greater Tucson and Tucson Agenda to provide their thoughtful written answers with references prior to this event in order to allow our recorded audience the best possible experience engaging with their answers to the challenges and issues facing our Pima County community. Those answers and references will be available Monday on both Tucson Agenda and the dgt.org, where the recordings of this event will also be made available in coming days to those who are unable to attend this event live. Thanks to Mr. Kurt Pendergast of Tucson Agenda. Let's give him a hand. For volunteering his time and expertise to moderate this debate. Mr. Pendergast is also volunteering his time to moderate clean elections debates through Arizona's unique Clean Elections Commission. Mr. Pendergast will shortly discuss the rules and terms of this debate. We would like to take this opportunity to recognize those who helped make this event possible. The Democrats for Greater Tucson. For almost 40 years, the Democrats of Greater Tucson have pursued our mission of keeping our community informed about local candidates and policies who affect their lives most immediately by providing regularly scheduled public forums every Monday at noon, in which to engage policymakers directly and personally. We invite you to visit at the dgt.org, where we post all our upcoming events, including our Monday noon Zooms, our monthly happy hour, and special events such as this one, and our evening salon panels on a diverse array of public subjects, as well as recordings of all our past events going back to 2019. We invite you to join our mission as a member of the DGT for just $24 for all of 2024. The Tucson Agenda is a daily newsletter focused on local government and politics. It is run and 100% owned by two local reporters, Kurt Prendergast and Caitlin Schmidt. They launched the agenda in July of 2023 with the assistance and encouragement of Hank Stevenson of sister publication Arizona Agenda. They depend on subscriptions for most of their revenue, so please take a moment and subscribe at tucsonagenda.substack.com for just $10 a month. With that, I would like to turn it over to Mr. Pendergast to review the rules of this debate and commence.
Okay, thank you. And thank you all for coming. So yes, I'm going to go through the rules for the debate right now. We expect the debate to last about an hour, hour and a half, depending on the choices of the debaters. I'm going to ask a series of questions about issues of importance to Pima County. Both parties of the debate were provided these questions in advance of this debate in order to prepare their best and most substantive answers and to provide written responses with any references they wish for publication to our audience at the DG. Debaters will have minutes to respond verbally to these moderator questions and may refer listeners to their written responses and references. Both parties will have the option to take 2 minutes to rebut the answer of the other party, followed by an optional counter rebuttal of 1 minute to any such rebuttal. We will proceed from my questions for the candidates to the candidates' one question for each other. These have been held in confidence by myself until each candidate will have 3 minutes to respond to these questions, followed by an optional 2-minute rebuttal, an optional 1 rebuttal, giving the candidate receiving his opponent's question the last word. Our timekeeping will be strict, and we invite the audience to help enforce time limits by giving any offender a nice loud round of applause. They exceed their limits too egregiously or repeatedly. So yeah, we will begin. We're going to toss a coin. Although it's 2024, does anyone have any coins?
We can toss an iPhone.
You have a one?
Yeah, that's my campaign manager. There's an app for that.
Oh, sure. Okay.
That was good.
But we can't have the campaign person be the flip. All right. So we're going to do heads will be Rex Scott, tails will be Jake Martin. Tails to Jake Martin.
Did we decide if we were standing?
Up to
Yes.
you.
So yeah, you can absolutely stand. And let's
We've got you on camera up until these white lines. So if you guys feel like coming out into this front area, that's okay. Just don't go past the where the cameras are.
And I'll hand you the microphone after that's a question. Okay, so the poverty rate in Pima County is 15%.
Kurt, pardon me for a
Yes.
second. I thought we were doing opening and closing.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
That's what
apologize.
thought.
Go for it.
There you go.
Sorry about that, everybody. It's a little bit of a hectic start, isn't it? So, first things first, I'd like to take a minute to address the elephant in the room, which is what the heck is a 21-year-old college junior, still a junior, I haven't taken my last final yet, doing on this debate stage today? So when I was 18 years old, I founded a nonprofit called Survivor Shield. We were one of the first in the state of Arizona to provide emergency relief financial assistance to survivors of sexual assault and domestic violence. Next up, we became one of the first in the state of Arizona to provide free clothes, shoes, and essential items to survivors of sexual violence and their kids. Most recently, we've instituted one of the lowest barrier mental health care programs in the state of Arizona. My experience has been on the front lines of issues in our community. Whether it's sexual, domestic violence, the opioid crisis, I've been out on the streets of our community and I've been talking to people. And when I talk to people, they tell me about their experiences. And the reason why I'm on this stage is because those people need an advocate. Because right now in Pima County, our policies aren't working for all of us. They're not working for the people who need them. So I'm running as somebody with experience in writing legislation that actually helps people out of poverty. I'm running as a business leader, as a job creator, and as a Democrat who's concerned for the future of our community. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I would like to begin by thanking the Democrats of Greater Tucson and the Tucson Agenda for sponsoring this event. It is good to be here with Jake Martin, who is running an energetic and honorable campaign to talk about the issues that concern us not just as Democrats, but also as two people who care deeply about our home and its citizens. Pima County is one of the most visually spectacular places on earth. Even given that, its people make it the truly special place it is. The most important two things to know about me are that I am a husband and father. My beloved wife, Terry, is here with me today. We celebrate our 24th anniversary. I'm sorry, we celebrate our 30th anniversary in 24 days. I was confused, honey.
That's
Sorry.
fair. That's fair.
Our twins, Caitlin and Trent, make us proud every day to be their parents. It is hard to believe they will be 30 next year. Since 1991, when I moved here from Ohio, I have worked on behalf of the people of Pima County. From 1991 to 2019, I was a teacher and an administrator in our public schools. The schools that I served were a diverse group and served an even more diverse group of learners. I am blessed and proud to say that I learned the needs of this community through the eyes of its children. The year after I retired as an educator, I decided to run for this office. It promised to be a daunting challenge. District 1 had not elected a Democrat as their supervisor since we would serve our constituents with caring, common sense, and attention to both service and outreach, and we won. When I was a principal, the three adjectives I most hoped my students, parents, and staff would apply to me were communicative, visible, and supportive. Those are good characters for a supervisor as well. We have conducted 16 town halls since coming out of the pandemic, have spoken to dozens of community groups, put out a regular newsletter, and have a 24-hour turnaround policy with regard to people who contact our office for help. Policymaking is problem solving writ large. The Board of Supervisors is a policymaking body. As your supervisor, I have worked with my colleagues to take on big problems, from always making public health and safety our highest priority to ensuring that our roads are properly repaired and maintained, or pledging that any family who wants to send their child to preschool can do so. I make every policy-making decision with the best interest of our people in mind. I hope that the Democratic Party will select me as their nominee for this office as it did in 2020. If you grant me that honor, I promise to work alongside all of you to keep the seat that we won back 4 years ago. I am happy to be here today to share my thoughts with you. Thank you for the privilege of serving as your supervisor.
Okay, so now we'll get into the question section of this, and I would like to note that they both wrote very, very thoughtful responses to our questions, which will be available to you. So the poverty rate in Pima County is 15%. What should the county's role be in lowering that rate? Do you see any steps the county has taken in recent years that you think are working well? Any that aren't working well and should be discontinued? Start with Jake.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Okay. So look, poverty in Pima County is not just an abstract concept. It's a reality that we deal with every single day when we look outside. When I go to work in the mornings, I have to drive down Aviation Highway and I see the homeless encampments lining the side of the road. I see it when I drive home too. Poverty manifests in rising opioid use, record overdose levels, lack of access to social resources, and poor education access, particularly among our homeless populations. Now, like I talked about earlier, every day I go into work, I work with homeless people. I work with impoverished families. And every day they tell me their stories. And there are some stark consistencies. Almost every family, almost every homeless individual will tell you that they fell through the cracks. They fell through the cracks in our social service, healthcare, and law enforcement apparatus. And if we want to end that, if we want to prevent people from getting on the streets, we need to address those systemic failures and we need to get rid of the cracks. And the way that we can do it is through something that I have been campaigning to establish for a long time, even before I entered this race. And that's the Family Advocacy Center. It's a central location where law enforcement, social services, and healthcare workers will be co-located to provide resources to people in situations of crisis. Now that eliminates two types of cracks. It gets rid of the fact that they can get to locations, right? If people don't have a car, how can we expect them to bounce from the police station to my office, to Sakasa, to a drug detox center without relapsing, without falling back into the environments that are perpetuating homelessness, that are perpetuating violence? We can't. So we look at each other and we talk about poverty and we say, well, why is it happening? It's happening because we're letting people fall through the cracks. And right now in this election, we have somebody who is advocating a clear, concise, and direct way to get rid of the cracks. When it comes to things that Pima County has done well, I think we all have to recognize that Supervisor Scott's support of the free early child care has been critical. We're one of the only communities in the United States that has that. It's something that I'm very proud of. But what Pima County doesn't do well is it consistently overlooks the role of social services in eliminating poverty. We don't talk to the people that we write legislation that's supposed to help them. We don't talk to homeless people when we write legislation for them. And if we don't talk to them, we don't understand what's making them homeless. We need people who understand the realities.
Well done, audience, well done.
Pima County is a place where low-wage jobs and unacceptably high rates of poverty have been the norm for decades. As just one example, Tucson ranks in the bottom 10 out of 100 metropolitan areas in terms of children who live in high poverty settings. Over the course of a year, county staff, working in partnership with all other local jurisdictions and the nonprofit sector, developed the Prosperity Initiative, a policy framework that will guide our budgetary and resource allocation decisions moving forward. It has the lofty goal of taking on intergenerational poverty. Our greatest measures of success for any endeavor that comes out of the Prosperity Initiative will be reductions in household costs and increases in household assets for those in our community living in poverty. The framework consists of 13 policy statements in 3 areas: education, critical family resources, and asset building and infrastructure priorities. There are also 3 cross-policy strategies using a 2-generation approach: resilience and environmental justice, and reduction. The first cross-policy strategy is significant given that the majority of people who live in poverty in our county are children. We cannot hope to improve their present and future circumstances if we do not also focus on the needs of their parents. For the county, the shift to priority-based budgeting will be the greatest change stemming from our adoption of the Prosperity Initiative. The public will see how we are aligning all of our financial decisions with the policy goals outlined in the framework. We will also be working with both the Aspen Institute and the Urban Institute to gain from their experience supporting other cities and counties that have adopted similar policies. When we adopted the Prosperity Initiative last December, I said the following: the public we serve will rightly expect that we are able to point to the tangible results of our efforts. One of the standard people we represent will expect us to be true to this standard, especially if the Prosperity Initiative is to be essential to everything we do as a local government. Conquering intergenerational poverty is not going to happen overnight. However, we have been encouraged and inspired by what we have achieved in 3 years to reduce barriers to access to quality early childhood education through the success of the Pima Early Education Program scholarships. Just this year, we are helping 1,700 kids go to preschool who would not be able to go otherwise. What that means to them and to their families attests to the increase in family well-being that must be the result of anything resulting from the Prosperity Initiative. Thank you very much.
And there is an opportunity for rebuttal if you'd like one.
Sure.
Okay, you have 2 minutes.
So in Supervisor Scott's statement, we heard one very, very important thing. The Prosperity Initiative is a set of policy statements. What's a policy statement? I'll tell you what it's not. Policy. If we want to end poverty, if we want to address crises like these, we can't pass a framework that we commit to following down the line. That's kicking the can down the road, and I'll tell you this as a social worker, as somebody who needs to write transparent policy within my own agency, assist other agencies in doing it. The Prosperity Initiative isn't what it needs to be. The Prosperity Initiative needs to be clear. It needs to be transparent, it needs to be concise, it needs to say we're gonna do A, it's gonna lead to B, and that's gonna give us Z. But it doesn't. It sets vague, lofty goals that we're gonna pass legislation down the line to accomplish. I don't want to pass legislation down the line. I wanna get it done. I wanna make sure that we're serving for the people of our community right now, not kicking the can down the road and promising lofty goals that we can't realistically accomplish without those clear steps that are available to the public and that hold our elected officials accountable. Thank you.
So the Prosperity Initiative was supported by myself, Supervisor Grijalva, and Supervisor Hines, and we had a vacancy District 3 at that time, and unfortunately Supervisor Christie, our one Republican member, opposed the Prosperity Initiative. It is more than a set of policy statements. It is a policy framework, and it is designed to guide all of our budgetary and resource allocation decisions moving forward into the future. I would encourage anybody in our community to take a look at the memorandum that came out from the county administrator subsequent to the meeting where we passed the Prosperity Initiative, so that they can get a better understanding of priority-based budgeting and what that's going to mean for the county moving forward. I also would ask them to take a look at what that memo says about how our grants management and innovation department is going to be working with the federal government to make sure that all of the grants that we get comply with the Justice 40 initiative from the federal government. It is certainly not a set of programs, but it is a framework that is going to design our resource allocation and budgetary decisions moving forward. We're going to continue our partnership with the nonprofit sector that was formed during the year that the Prosperity Initiative was being researched and developed, not just by Pima County, but by all of our local jurisdictions. So it is certainly something that is a blueprint that we're going to be able to follow to take on intergenerational poverty. And I'm very enthusiastic, not only with the support of almost the entire board, but also the wholesale effort made by every government in this region to get the Prosperity Initiative put in place. Thank you very much.
And we do have the opportunity for a 1-minute counter rebuttal if anyone is interested, or we can move on. Okay, great. All right, moving on to transportation. Local governments are negotiating next before they put it before the voters. What should the county's top priorities be in these negotiations? And what should the county do if the city of Tucson withdraws from RTA Next?
So in negotiations for the RTA Next, the county's top priorities absolutely need to be in investing in our public transit, buses, light rail, and expanding pedestrian and cycling infrastructure. Now, I got my first internship when I was 14 years old. I used to have to walk 3 miles to get to a bus stop, to take a bus 3 miles to get to work. Now, not everybody has the capacity to walk 3 miles to get to a bus stop to go to work. But the problem is that my story is unique. Many people struggle with accessibility to our public transit routes. They struggle with accessibility to get to their jobs as a result. They can't shop at businesses that are across town. So I think it's absolutely critical that we invest in public transit, because when I say we invest in public transit, right, everybody pictures buses, but we need to understand that when we say we're going to spend money on buses, we're going to spend money on expanding our routes, we're not saying that it's just we're buying more buses. We're saying that we're making investments in our economy. When people can get to work in new places, when people can shop at new local businesses, those are all dollars added to our local economy. So when we expand RTA Next with a focus on public transit, we're investing in our people, we're investing in our community, and we're gonna see the results of that continually down the line. When it comes to pedestrian and cycling infrastructure, we need expansions. In Pima County, we have an incredibly high rate of cyclist and pedestrian deaths because we don't have any crosswalks. I mean, how often are you driving down First at night and you just see people crossing the street? It's because there aren't alternatives. And our bike lanes are crumbling, just like our roads. So when we make investments in things like public transit, when we make investments in our cycling and pedestrian infrastructure so there are clean, healthy ways to get around, we're investing in our economy, we're investing in our people, and it is critical that we continue with RTA Next. If Tucson doesn't, as someone who has relied heavily on public transit, it would break my heart. I would want to make sure that the county pursues alternate options, whether that's working with other localities, whether it's doing something different, I can't say for sure. But I'm committed to expanding our public transit infrastructure. Thank you.
So I have been serving as the county's representative to the 9-member Regional Transportation Authority Board since 2021, when I took office as a county supervisor. The RTA is a special taxing authority authorized by the Arizona legislature. In 2006, the first 20-year RTA plan gained the approval of Pima County voters, as did the half-cent sales tax that funds the plan. The work to develop an RTA Next plan to cover the next 20-year period began before my election. It has certainly been the focus of the RTA board since 2021, along with the completion of the first RTA plan. The Citizens Advisory Committee forwarded 2 plans to us after their work was completed. We are currently working on refinements and revisions to one of those 2 plans, with the goal of beginning a public review period during the latter half of this year. Our plan is to have an election in May of 2025. Among the county's top priorities are to ensure that our infrastructure projects are included in the plan that goes before the voters. Over 1/3 of Pima County residents live in the unincorporated county. I am their advocate and voice on the RTA board. Having said that, another big emphasis for the county is ensuring the development of a plan that will earn broad-based support from all county voters, no matter where they live. As a result, we have put forth several compromise proposals during the discussions surrounding RTA Next that have helped to move the process forward. The county is seen as an honest broker by the other jurisdictions, and we work hard to maintain that status. If we look at how Pima County has grown, there can be no doubt that we are interconnected in terms of where we work, live, shop, and play. As just many people live in one of the 5 smaller cities or towns, work in Tucson, and drive through the unincorporated county on the way to their job. As another example, over 60% of RTA sales tax revenue is generated within the boundaries of the city of Tucson. However, those taxes are collected from people who live throughout the county. The first RTA plan funded close to 1,000 projects and programs since it was approved in 2006. There is no way any one of the jurisdictions in Pima County could have achieved those results on their own. There would not have been state or federal revenues that could have produced the same outcomes, and the same will be true during the next 20-year period. All 9 members of the RTA board are engaging with each other to get a plan out for the public review period. I do not believe that any one of the local jurisdictions are going to walk away and go it on their own. Each of us knows that we are too intertwined for that to be a logical move. We also know that a regional approach to addressing common needs not only makes sense based on how we grow, it's also the best way to ensure future good and business and jobs. Sorry.
So I want to take a moment here. So we're, about a third of the way through, something like that. I'll open it up to you guys. So if you all have any questions, start thinking about them. We'll pass the microphone around when we're done, and you all can pepper them with the questions. Yes.
Rex and I agree on RTA. We need to rip on them.
Okay. Okay, so moving on to the environment and the economy. The green economy depends on minerals like copper that are mined in Pima County. So how do you balance the need to fight climate change with the environmental damage that often comes with mining? Specifically, what should the county do about the Copper World project? And this is, I think you can go.
Oh, okay, I wasn't. Okay.
We're kind of got it. What was it here?
Copper mining is absolutely critical to the future of a green economy. We find copper in electric car batteries, in solar panels, in our phones, you name it, it has copper. But if we want to continue with copper mining in Pima County, I would want to see 3 standards set for the companies that want to come in and mine. First of all, I'd want to see an independent third-party audit of what specifically the environmental impact will be. What types of animal migration patterns will be disrupted? What acreage is it going to take up? And most importantly, is there a realistic possibility that the contaminated water from the copper mine will leak into our groundwater? Secondly, I want to see an independent financial audit. When copper mines come to Pima County, when they come to new locations, they tend to promise a lot for the economy. But then they ship in their specialists from out of state, and they ship the copper overseas to be smelted, so we don't actually get any of the financial benefit that they promised. Lastly, I want to make sure it's easy to hold copper mining companies accountable if they don't live up to the standards that they set for us. If we find out that they're violating environmental standards, if we find out that they're illegally dumping, contaminating our groundwater, we need to make it easier to revoke their permits. When it comes to Hudbay in particular, the company behind the Copper World project, my answer is a hard no. They propose that they're going to use 5,100 acre-feet of water per year. That's enough for 15,000 to 20,000 homes in Pima County. As water becomes a more and more scarce resource, we need to be very cautious with where we're investing it. And damaging our environment for short-term economic gain is not a wise investment of that. If another country came into the United States, blew up our mountains and poisoned our water, we'd go to war. But when Hudbay does it, it's fine. Now the Copper World project has already started in the Santa Rita Mountains. As your supervisor, I will do everything that I can to protect us from water contamination, environmental disasters, and exploitative practices of our local economy. Thank you.
The Pima County Board of Supervisors, not just our board, but previous boards, has consistently opposed both the Rosemont and Copper World proposals. We have based that opposition not just on the potential impacts on the surrounding land, but also the effects the mine's operations could have on groundwater, surrounding washes, and air quality. The board has heard from countless residents who also oppose these proposals, including representatives from Native American tribes who object to impacts on lands they consider sacred. The Rosemont proposal is unlikely to move forward given successful legal action against it because of the impact it would have had on federal lands. As a result, Hudbay, the Canadian company that owns the land where the proposed mines are located, is making a strong push to move forward with the Copper World mine, which is wholly located on land they own. We still oppose it for the reasons I cited. The state of Arizona will play the largest role in determining if the Copper World project moves forward. Pima County staff have provided input to their peers at the state level regarding our concerns with the mine's potential effects. The Board of Supervisors gets frequent updates from the county administrator on these matters. I sponsored a resolution last spring that opposed federal legislation that might have allowed Hudbay to make an end run around both federal law and federal court rulings and push the Rosemont proposal forward. That legislation, unfortunately co-sponsored in the US Senate by Kyrsten Sinema, has thankfully not progressed, largely due to the opposition of other members of the Arizona delegation. The letters to our members of Congress included this excerpt, which speaks to Pima County's appreciation of the role responsible mining plays in our local economy. Please know that Pima County is not anti-mining. The copper mines in Pima County have contributed significantly to national and international copper supplies. Pima County has a good relationship with our two largest copper producers, Freeport, McMoran, and ASARCO, and in particular has taken actions to support expansion of existing mining operations in the areas southwest of Tucson. This area is less biologically diverse and more suitable for development according to the county's comprehensive Sonoran Desert Conservation Plan and U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Section 10 permit, both of which were developed based on the best available science and informed by extensive public input. This area also has significant copper reserves for future development. Pima County has also worked cooperatively with two other copper mining companies. Thank you very much.
We have any rebuttals here, or are we kind of in agreement?
We're I think again.
Yeah?
in agreement.
All right, fair enough. Okay, so we're gonna switch the order. Mr. Scott, you're gonna go first this time. So, we're moving on to the jail. The county faces costly choices when it comes to the jail, such as replacing it entirely or investing in repairing it. What do you see as the main problems at the jail? And can repairs to the jail address those problems, or should the county replace it?
I do not believe that we have enough information to determine if a new jail is needed. However, there are definitely issues with the current that must be addressed. The original commission formed by the Board of Supervisors found that the conditions that need to be repaired are largely due to age, deferred maintenance, and vandalism. For example, all the cast iron pipes in the 40-year tower need to be replaced. The current facility also frequently has capacity issues, especially in its medical and mental health units. In a memorandum to the board in February, the county administrator said the following: the commission recognized the inherent limitations in its jail population projections and concurred in the final report that additional review and information is needed to further inform those numbers and look at ways to successfully reduce them. To do that, however, the county would need participation from stakeholders from the criminal justice system, justice services, medical care providers, and other social service network providers. One of the great frustrations for our board has been getting a better sense of who is in the jail and why. The original commission noted in its report to the board that they found when they took a snapshot of the jail population in December of last year, 87% of those in the jail were pending charges, with 94% of them facing felony charges. Most of the people in the jail are charged with nonviolent offenses. It has been difficult to get a sense of who needs to be held because they are a threat to public safety or are a flight risk. It has also been a challenge to determine who remains in jail simply because they cannot make bail. County staff has until August 1 to conduct a review of past work in Pima County designed to reduce both the jail population and recidivism. Staff will also get a better sense of the composition of the jail population. A new commission, the Justice System and Infrastructure Review Committee, will be convened after that to take on several tasks, including to identify tactics to reduce recidivism rates and to identify successful strategies and partners to reduce jail admissions and reduce lengths of stay. The board has also asked staff to provide us with information as to essential needs for the current facility. Deciding whether or not we need a new jail is not a choice that can be made in isolation. It must be part of a larger appraisal of our criminal justice system. This will include consideration of another topic that has come before the board in recent years, how initial appearances by defendants are handled by our courts. I am proud that we've been listening to all the concerns our community has about public safety and the criminal justice system. It will be a while before we can credibly determine if a new jail is needed, but the dialogue and work that will get us to that point is sorely needed and long overdue. Thank you.
So our county correction system, of course, has problems. Every county correction system in the United States has its problems. And recently I've gotten to be very, very up close and personal with these problems. My nonprofit Survivor Shield recently initiated a new program that serves inmates at the county jail, providing comprehensive mental health care support. As a part of the initiation of that program, I got to go on a tour of the facilities about 2 weeks ago. And on that tour, I saw a lot of the things that physically need to be repaired, whether it's crumbling infrastructure, unreliable elevators, whatever it may be. But I also got to talk to inmates. And this whole jail debate is a prime example of the county trying to legislate issues that they don't talk to the people that they're trying to help. When I talked to inmates, when I talked to guards, they were pretty much all in agreement that they don't want a new facility. We don't need to spend $800 million taxpayer dollars on a shiny new facility when we have one that's functional. We need to invest in repairing the jail that's there, absolutely. But we can use it as an opportunity. We can use it as an opportunity to look at what we're doing wrong and fix it. I'm talking about providing critical mental health care support to inmates. I'm talking about providing job training programs. I'm talking about looking at alternatives to incarceration. Study after study after study tells us loud and clear that when you treat inmates like people, when you meet them where they are, recidivism rates drop, crime rates drop, and inmates have an easier time of reintegrating with our society. So if we want to renovate the jail, sure, we absolutely need to. It needs to be a priority. But we need to renovate the way that we think about inmates. Inmates aren't numbers. They're not something to be looked over. They are people. And they're people who need our help. 94% of them are in for non-violent offenses. Imagine if we addressed what made them offend, instead of locking them away from offenders, segregating them from society, and telling them that there's something wrong with them. Talk about a fixed problem. Thank you.
You know, I don't necessarily want to use this time to rebut so much as to echo a lot of what Jake just said. Because what we have been hearing as we've been talking about whether or not we need a new jail is that we need to take our entire criminal justice system and whether or not there are alternatives that we have been exploring in a robust manner as opposition to just is what somebody needs. There was a very thoughtful opinion column that was written by our sheriff, our county attorney, and our police chief just last year that addressed a lot of the issues that Jake just mentioned. Sheriff Nanos has referred to the jail as the largest mental health facility in the county. It shouldn't be. We are not doing enough to look at alternatives to incarceration. We are not doing enough to look at ways of dealing with recidivism, although the transition center that the county opened last year, with the full support of the board, by the way, and it's hard to get a 5-0 vote out of the board, has been helpful in terms of referring people to services in the community that can help them to avoid contact with the criminal justice system. So when Sheriff Nanos came to the board and asked us to jail, what he inadvertently also prompted has been a wholesale and long overdue debate on the criminal justice system in this county and how we are dealing with all of the reasons that people get engaged in that criminal justice system. Thank you very much.
Jake, you'd like to take a minute to share that?
So when it comes to talking about inmates and talking about people in the jail, right, I know exactly how we can figure out what services we need to help them. We can go and ask them. That's something that we can do. We can ask them what specifically they need, what they feel they missed out on, and we can provide it for other people. And when we do that, we're including the people that we intend to serve in the policy making itself. So by talking to people, by figuring out what they need, that's how we're going to provide services for them. And that's what my model will be as your supervisor. Talking to people who we're trying to help and using their words to help them. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We have, this is the last of the questions that I prepared, then we'll move into the questions the candidates prepared. Pima County and most of the country is going through a multifaceted housing crisis. What do you see as the most pressing problem with regard to housing, and what specific steps would you take to address it?
Scott?
Thank you. The biggest single cause of the spike of homelessness in Pima County and across the nation is a lack of affordable housing. According to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, our county needs approximately 26,000 additional units of affordable housing to meet its needs. Governments at all levels will need to make investments in housing a priority. The federal commitment is sorely lacking, and that has been the case for years. Thanks to Governor Hobbs and Democrats in the legislature making it a priority, Arizona put $150 million into the state's housing trust fund after years of neglecting that resource. Pima County has been able to access that fund to help our efforts in confronting homelessness and bringing more affordable housing into the region. The board formed a regional affordable housing commission earlier in our tenure. It includes representatives appointed by each supervisor as well as representatives from all of the local jurisdictions, including the Pascua Yaqui tribe and Tohono O'odham Nation. They are charged with crafting a strategy to increase the amount of affordable workplace and market rate housing in our region. The commission's formation was one of the recommendations that came from a task force that looked at housing needs during and before the pandemic. We also put $10 million in our budget the last 2 years for gap funding, which helps local developers of affordable housing to fill the gap between the funding they have to complete a project and what they need to get it done. County staff and the commission vet applications for funding before making recommendations for approval to the board. That funding resulted in over 1,000 additional units of affordable housing being planned for our region. The commission will soon consider a plan from county staff to put county-owned parcels of land on the market for developers of affordable housing to bid on. Along with providing gap funding and streamlining our approval processes for development projects, this is one of the most impactful steps we can take. Per a memo to the board from the county administrator, all the county-owned parcels under consideration meet these criteria. Vacant properties that could accommodate the development of multiple homes or apartments with current appropriate zoning, identified constraints such as flood areas, riparian, or other barriers to use could be mitigated through site improvements. Utilities are adjacent or nearby, including sewer, water, and electric power. Transit accessibility is nearby. I will remain committed to this work if granted a second term. Well before the pandemic, too many of our citizens were unable to afford housing or paid an inordinate amount of their monthly incomes to housing costs. The drive to bring more housing into our region, like so many other areas of importance, will require a high degree of regional collaboration. Thank you very much.
most pressing problem in terms of housing in Pima County is homelessness. It's an enormous crisis, and it is consistently ballooning. According to the Tucson Pima collaboration to end homelessness, homelessness has risen by 60% since 2018. That's 2,200 people who are homeless right now as we're having this debate. 2,200 people. That's 2,200 people who don't know where their next meal is coming from, who don't know where they're sleeping tonight, who don't know how they're gonna make an income. And so often when we have these debates, I find that the rhetoric we use dehumanizes the homeless population. But these people aren't lost causes. They're a growing segment of our population who are facing increasingly difficult economic and personal challenges. So we can talk about establishing affordable housing. That is all well and good, and I am all for it. But we can't talk about addressing the housing crisis without talking about addressing the ultimate housing crisis, which is not having one. So how are we going to get 2,200 people off of our streets and into shelters? We need a rapid rehousing approach. And what that means is our first goal needs to be getting people off the streets and into shelters. That means we need to work with our nonprofit corporations, specifically the Gospel Rescue Mission, help them expand their bed space, perform street outreach to inform homeless individuals and families of the programs that we're instituting as a community. Now, the Gospel Rescue Mission's annual budget is $12 million a year, and they can take in 50 people a business week. Imagine if we invested $12 million a year on top of that into the Gospel Rescue Mission. Imagine what they would be capable of doing with the bed space. Once we get people off the streets, that's when we focus on wraparound services. That's when we focus on detox. That's when we focus on job programs to get them back into the workforce. But our first step, before we do anything else, needs to be addressing the fact that 2,200 people, 2,200 families don't have beds tonight. And that's my commitment as your supervisor. Thank you.
Again, not so much an opportunity to rebut anything that Jake said, but I was glad that he mentioned the Tucson Pima collaboration to end homelessness, because that is a local entity that includes not just the city of Tucson and Pima County and the other local jurisdictions. It also includes a whole compendium of nonprofit, private sector organizations. And that organization, the Tucson Pima Collaboration to End Homelessness, is very much in need of reform. There is far too much turf protection and bureaucratic infighting going on within TPCH, and that is preventing funds from getting out onto the street to help those 2,200 people that Jake referenced, that are the number that we calculated during the last point in time count of our homeless population. I'm frustrated by the fact that when you take a look at something that is so vital in terms of making sure that all of our local, state, and federal funds are being used effectively, that there is just too much, as I said, turf protection and bureaucratic infighting going on. And I appreciate the work of high barrier shelters like Gospel Rescue Mission, but we also need, they are a high barrier shelter. And to get into a high barrier shelter, you have to meet certain conditions, dealing with your lifestyle and personal choices. And some people are either unable or unwilling to make those. So we need more low barrier shelters in our community as well. More than anything else, we need this entire community to come together so that all of the funds that come into our region to combat homelessness are being used effectively. Thank you very much.
So I think it's pretty clear that what the county is doing right now isn't working. If it was, we wouldn't have seen a 60% rise in overall homelessness since 2018, which, by the way, encompassed a 300% rise in unsheltered homelessness. So what do? How do we fix these crises? How do we get rid of the bureaucracy that Supervisor Scott was talking about? Well, we need to make investments into nonprofit organizations. Nonprofits can function without all of that bureaucracy, but we can still provide governmental oversight of their operations to ensure that they're meeting health standards, to ensure that they're meeting high quality of living standards, and to ensure that they're doing what we're asking them to do. So we can ditch the bureaucracy. We can move forward and actually make steps to end homelessness, but we need people who are committed and willing to fight like hell to do it. And that candidate is me.
Okay, so now we're entering, we have each one of the candidates prepared a question for the other candidate, and they don't know what these questions are. So we're gonna start with Mr. Scott's question from Mr. Martin. The Board of Supervisors is a policy-making board. Based on your experience with Survivor Shield, what are some areas of policy you'd like to focus on to help sexual assault victims? And are there other areas of policy you prioritize as a supervisor?
Thank you, and thank you for the question, Rex. So my biggest policy priority as a supervisor, like I kind of lined out earlier, is going to be the Family Advocacy Center. The one-stop shop for social services, law enforcement, and healthcare, so we can eliminate the cracks in our law enforcement, social service, and healthcare apparatus, which is a lot of times to say law enforcement, social service, and healthcare in one sentence. So as we move forward, our policy needs to be on serving people. We need to figure out the most effective steps forward and how we can actually provide services to people in need, as opposed to providing services that don't necessarily trickle all the way down to the bottom, so we can build our economy from the bottom up. The best way that I see to do that in terms of actual policy initiative is the Family Advocacy Center. Additionally, I'd like to green energy initiatives, whether it's solar subsidies, whatever that may be. I'd like to work towards eliminating regulations that tend to constrain our small businesses. One of my friends is a small business owner, and it took him 3 months to get a permit in order to fix a cracked window. And things like that don't help us business. So in terms of my social policy, I am all for building the Family Advocacy Center, helping survivors of sexual and domestic violence, whatever it may be. In terms of green energy policy, I'm all for investments in green energy. In terms of small business policy, that's thought out too. But very meticulously thought out approach to how we're going to make things better in our community. And I think that answered all facets of Supervisor Scott's question. So I'll give the mic back to Kurt.
Okay, going the other way this time. This is the Jake Martin question for Rex Scott. During your term, there has been a sharp increase in homelessness, including unsheltered homelessness, and the rate of fatal opioid overdoses remains at record levels. Do you feel like you've done enough to address these crises? And why would electing you for another 4-year term make them any better?
I feel very strongly that those issues that are embedded in that question are issues that our entire community has not done enough to address. When it comes to unsheltered homelessness and the spike in unsheltered homelessness, the biggest reason for that is the lack of housing and the lack of affordable housing. Remember, I said that according to the National Low Income Housing Coalition, we need 26,000 additional units of housing. That is not solely something that the public sector is going to be able to do. That's why the Regional Affordable Housing Commission is taking a look at what can the private sector do, what can the public sector do. And again, the public sector's biggest contributions can be streamlining our processes, providing gap funding, and also making county-owned parcels available for affordable housing development. When it comes to the opioid crisis, I have pushed for more of our opioid settlement funds to get out onto the street. They have been held up for over a year because of very fractious negotiations between the county and the city in terms of an intergovernmental agreement about how to get those funds out onto the street. We're going to be voting to approve that agreement at our meeting on Tuesday, and Mayor and Council is set to approve the same agreement that night. We also are going to be looking at more ways to partner with the state in terms of melding the funds that they got from the opioid settlement and the funds that we have. There's also a new division within the county health department that was formed by health department leadership to more effectively make use of opioid settlement funds and also associated grant funds that the county has applied for to augment the use of those opioid settlement funds. So no, I don't think that we have done nearly enough. I don't think that any government has done nearly enough, and I don't think our community as a whole has done nearly enough. Thank you.
No. Was that a rebuttal?
I was asking if you wanted
Because
to.
we can do one to the other one.
Oh, yeah, okay, all right.
So, yeah, we're fine.
Great,
Oh, that's a great
okay.
answer.
Do we have any questions from the audience? I'm gonna go over here. Great, I'm glad to see some hands.
Thank you. Both of you speak of reform for our entire justice system, and some people are fearing putting criminals back on the street. How would you both educate the people in our community about these plans?
We only have one microphone. Let's do, who's gone first lately? Let's go,
So I think it's an essential function of leadership to be able to explain not only any decision that you make, but the rationale for making that decision. If it's a decision that the board makes, the processes that I go through before I vote either yes or no on a policy decision are steps that I need to be able to explain to anybody who asks me for the basis of my decision. If it's something that is a decision by another level of government, and sentencing guidelines may well be a decision of another level of government, then I think we need to learn as much about them as possible so that we can again be able to explain them to people in the community who have concerns or questions.
So I think in terms of how people are going to react when we say that we want to reform the criminal justice system and that could result in some more offenders being out on the streets, I think it's important to be clear about what type of offenders that we're talking about putting through rehabilitation programs and actually working with. We don't want to do that with murderers, right? We don't want to do that with violent offenders. But people who are currently serving 1 or more years for a non-violent marijuana offense, what kind of society are we if we're locking them away and separating them without saying, look, let's address the systems that got you there in the first place? So I think to answer your question, we need to be very, very clear that we're not letting violent offenders back out on the streets, that we're not letting people who are potentially dangerous, who want to cause harm to others, back out into the community without serving their time. But I think it's also important that we recognize that the scientific backing of the plan to sort of use a social service approach to working towards reducing criminal recidivism works. And that in fact, adopting these policies will make our communities safer, not more dangerous.
And would you like to add anything to that? No? Okay. And the other questions? We had some hands. I saw yours earlier.
Of course. My name is Tracy Van Kira. Hi. So this is kind of personal. You're talking about really high-level issues, and I wanted to bring it back to something that really troubles me. It's an environmental issue. It's plastics. You all probably know that we have some exciting developments through Ward 6 and now other wards for recycling. Our first fantastic factory for making the plastic blocks. We're really a model for the rest of the country that way. But as a veteran volunteer, hundreds of hours at a very humble level with the Carry God Community Kitchen, with the food bank, with interfaith community services, sometimes I get real cognitive dissonance around the tremendous amount of plastics that are used in those organizations to feed, to take care of people who can't take care of themselves for one reason or another. And I talked to administrators at those organizations about my concern, and they are dealing with a kind of an urgency that apparently doesn't allow them to look past the immediate huge use of plastics, which, by the way, disproportionately affect the very people that they are trying to serve. Apparently, those kind of emergency services, they don't have the energy to think beyond that immediacy. But for me, watching this, handing out bottles, doing everything that I don't do in my personal life to try and take care of these people, it's really troubling. Can you say something about that?
Jake, you can go first.
Thank you.
So thank you for that great question. Plastics are actually something that I'm weirdly very passionate about. So we call them Steve Kozachek's big bricks, the Ward 6 plastic bricks that we can use to build affordable housing, things like that. And it is an absolutely fantastic system, and it's incredible. So what we do is work alongside Ward 6 to expand that recycling program, to get it out into more rural areas of Pima County so that we can have more of those bricks going into our system in a much more effective recycling method. But in terms of your second question, so I'm somebody who's done everything that you just talked about, handing out water bottles, handing out food, and the plastic waste is absolutely something that's disturbed me as well. So one thing that I think we need to do is boost regulations when it comes to plastic waste usage, right? How much can these larger corporations be producing before we say that it's enough? Because it's going to be causing some serious environmental harm. But I also think that it would be worth it to look at how we can help these nonprofits transition from plastics to more sustainable materials, because I can tell you as a nonprofit director who's looked into those expenses, it's a lot of money. So we need to figure out ways, A, to regulate and reduce waste, and B, how we can help these corporations to actually reduce the amount of waste that they're producing by maybe helping them bite some of those expenses. I hope that answered your question.
Can I just say, could you speak to the reduction by these social service organizations of their use of plastics?
Actually, I would say, just to give other people a chance to ask questions, I think we'll move on to the next topic, if that's all right.
Ask me later.
So the county was already beginning dialogue with Councilmember Kozachek when, pardon?
We'll have time to discuss.
Okay. The county was already beginning a dialogue with Councilmember Kozachek about the county becoming involved with the bifusion process before he left the Ward 6 office, and now he's a county employee, so I think we're going to be able to continue that conversation with him. When I was a student, I was elected to city council in my hometown in Ohio, and one of the first things that we did was we started the city's first curbside recycling initiative. And one of the things that we found out, and this is as true now as it was then, is that the tax code and other financial incentives for using recycled products as opposed to using virgin materials definitely encourage manufacturers to use virgin materials. That was true in 1988 when we started that program. That is true now. So if we want to reduce the use of plastic, if we want to see more plastic recycling, that is going to require endeavors at all levels of government, most especially the federal and state levels where those tax incentives are written into the tax codes. The county does not pick up waste or recyclables. We contract with different companies to do that in the of the county that we're responsible for, but we certainly can put incentives into the contract to encourage recycling pickup by those companies. But if there's no market for those recycled materials, that's a significant problem. And you've probably seen in the media pictures of recycled materials in warehouses all around this country because there isn't any place to send them to make use. This is something that all of us are going to have to take on in terms of what we're going to prioritize with regard to the use of recycled materials and the encouragement of recycling.
Thank goodness we have Katie Hobbs and Chris Mays and Adrian Fontes to keep our legislature, who gives really bad bills to them and are unable to get the opposition to pass any good gun regulation bills, sensible gun regulation bills, to Katie. But with Chris as an ally and Katie as an ally, are we able to be an entity here where we can now form our own gun regulations, that if we're not going to get sued by Governor Ducey, he's gone, and I can't remember the crazy Attorney General's Bronovich. Are we able to do anything on our own now to stem the tide of gun violence? In just this past 2 weeks, we've seen it by the university. So I know that you've worked with Laura Conover, Supervisor Scott, but what else can we do besides those little steps? And we're willing to take little steps. Keep that in mind.
Mr. Scott, we can start with you.
So one of the first things that I did when I came onto the board was successfully craft and see passed a resolution that called for the legislature to repeal Arizona Revised Statute 13-3108. That's what's known as a preemption statute. There are these preemption statutes in every state of the country. Why? Because the National Rifle Association has prioritized putting these statutes in place. The preemption statute in Arizona says that we cannot have any gun law or regulation at the local level that is stricter than is what at the state level. State Representative Gutierrez advanced that legislation for us, and as you know, Pat, her bill wasn't even able to get a hearing in committee. We reserve the right to sue the state because the county is the public health and safety authority for this region, and we feel that that might be a basis for suing the state as to the constitutionality of that statute. The county attorney's office is looking at cases in other states, notably Pennsylvania, to see if we might pursue that. I recently crafted and saw passed an ordinance that requires people who report that they have lost or stolen a weapon to report that to law enforcement. Because oftentimes when a weapon is allegedly lost or stolen, that is often the basis for a stranger who under state law is not allowed to get a firearm, gets a firearm. We have already been sued by the Goldwater Institute for that ordinance. And we have asked Attorney General Mays for an expedited legal opinion as to whether or not that ordinance violates the state preemption statute. But here's the bottom line, ladies and gentlemen. This legislature is owned lock, stock, and barrel by the National Rifle Association and the rest of the gun lobby. And if you want to see some changes in Arizona's gun laws, you need to elect more Democrats. Thank you very much.
So to start off in answering your question, I'd just like to say that I'm a student. I go to the U of A. And my grandmother was in hospice when the shooting happened. So I was at her bedside, I wasn't on campus. But I remember the next day, the tears of students, the heavy weight that was in the air because it happened at our school. And not only did it happen in our school, our friends across the aisle told us that it wasn't that bad because only one person was shot. Every day when I'm at school, I know that that could be the day that somebody decides to walk in with a gun and start shooting. And I remember when I was young, I lived in Connecticut. We were very close to Newtown. And gun violence is an issue that's very close to my heart. And I will do everything in my power to make it so the sale of AR-15 style rifles, the purchase, sale, and trade is illegal in Pima County, and it's illegal in the state of Arizona. Whatever I can do as your supervisor, whatever avenues I can take, I will take. That is my promise, because I know how it feels. I know how it feels to be more likely to be shot in a classroom than our service members overseas. And it's not acceptable anymore. So I'm standing up for the students who aren't running. So thank you for your question. I hope that answered it.
You know, unfortunately, anybody who is the age of my opponent has grown up during a time where the threat of gun violence is not an exception, but it's the norm. I was finishing up my administrative internship when Columbine happened. And I was a school principal from 2000 to 2019. I have put schools into lockdown because of the threat of a weapon on campus. And I have attended far too many funerals of students who were either victims of homicide or suicide victims. Nobody can tell us logically or even with any emotional sincerity that the reason for the epidemic of gun violence in this country is not related to the number of guns that we have in this country. And local governments, again, under the Arizona State Constitution, your county government is responsible for public health and safety. We are the public health authority of this region. There's no City of Tucson Health Department. There's no Town of Marana Health Department. There's only the Pima County Health Department. And we ought to be able to take reasonable action at the county level to reduce the threat or possibility of gun violence if the Arizona legislature refuses to do so. But until we repeal that statute, or until we elect more people who are not held captive by the gun lobby, it's not going to happen. Thanks very much.
Okay, we got, we have, I see 1, 2, 3 hands. Is that it? Do we have 3 questions here? Okay, we'll move to you real quick.
Thank you. And thank you, gentlemen, for for me, it's really great to hear about all these different issues. I'm fairly new to Tucson. I lived here 7 years ago and just came back six months ago. And I think for me, I came from living in London and New York City. I've been pretty shocked by the drug situation and the fact that it's so visible and on the streets, and that's where I want to kind of focus on. Right now I'm working as an Uber driver, and I'll deliver folks to drug hotels, where you pull up to the hotel and there's a dozen, 2 dozen sometimes, folks hunched over, out of these hotels, which everybody just knows about, and there's multiple of them. And I think, I guess for me, seeing drug deals happening on Swan as I drive to my doctor, delivering folks to drug hotels that are allowed to kind of just be in full operation. I'm wondering, as supervisors, the powers that you guys have over permits for businesses that are law like that, or ordinances that could be put in place. But I think for me, in New York City and London, you can't just have hotels fully be operating as drug dealer centers. And you don't see folks just doing drug deals openly on major streets every day. So I'm just wondering, from a county supervisor's powers list, what you guys can do, what ideas that you have, and for me, it's the thing that I've noticed the most moving back here. So, yeah.
I think it's Jake's turn.
So the drug epidemic, and especially in Tucson and Southern Arizona in particular, it's bad. And I work on the front lines of the opioid crisis, specifically with fentanyl quite a bit. I've worked on cases where the victim we were working actually ended up overdosing because they ended up homeless after the assault. And there's a pretty clear path from homelessness to fentanyl abuse. So things like hotels, they're not acceptable because they are very, very real. The fact that we have drug deals happening in our streets in broad daylight on major thoroughfares, it's not acceptable. We need to be using more of our powers to either revoke the business licenses of those locations because they are functioning hotels, it's just they're adapting that environment in order to improve their own business. So I'm absolutely in favor of holding health and quality check investigations at those locations, and if they fail because they are actively participating in drug dealing, then we shut them down. And we take more actions to prosecute individuals, remove them from the streets, and get them the help that they need who are buying and selling drugs in broad daylight on our streets. So I think it's a multifaceted answer because on one hand, I'm absolutely in favor of revoking business licenses of locations that are knowingly participating in exacerbating this crisis and making it worse. But on the flip side, I don't necessarily think that by throwing addicts in jail, we're doing them a service because they're gonna come back out, they're gonna reoffend and end up back in jail, and it's a cyclical cycle of drug abuse. But we need to be prioritizing mental health interventions, treatments, things that are proven to actually help people.
To build on some of the points that Jake was making, the state of Oregon not too long ago decriminalized almost all of their illicit substances. But what they didn't do is make sure that there were enough services in place and a mandate to use those services by people who needed them to deal with the addiction and substance abuse problems that they were confronting. And so now they are going back to square one and trying to figure out how they can get help to these people while also holding them accountable for their own behavior. And it's that balance between accountability, individual accountability, recognizing how addictive some of these substances are. Fentanyl is one of the most extraordinarily addictive substances in the history of this planet, and is very, very dangerous as well. You never know just how much is going to be enough to kill you. But I don't think we're doing nearly enough using opioid settlement funds or other local funds to help people to confront their addictions. With regard to holding businesses accountable, one of the things that you find out when you work at the county level is that counties under Arizona state law are subdivisions of the state. And so we only have the powers that are granted to us by the legislature via statute or through the Arizona state constitution. So some of the measures that you're talking about in terms of holding businesses accountable may be something that is exercised at the county level, be something that is exercised at the state level in terms of licensing that those businesses have to get, or there may be another jurisdiction if it's something that's within the boundaries of the city of Tucson or one of the smaller towns. They might be the accountable party. I think the most important thing, and I've heard this constantly from our staff in the sheriff's department, is many times people are unwilling or afraid to call 911. And what you will hear from our first responders and law enforcement all the time is, please call. You may think it's a frivolous call, but we want to hear about everything, because it helps us to not only determine where to best make use of our resources and see patterns of behavior in our community, but what you think may be frivolous may be something that we are seeing happening quite a bit. And I bet what I'm hearing as a supervisor from Sheriff's Department employees, members of Marin Council would also be hearing from the police chief and his staff. I hope that was responsive to your question. Thank you.
Great. All right, so it looks like we have 2 more questions, and then you guys have a final thing you'd like to say?
Sure.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, I apologize for asking this question.
Uh-oh.
Because I do understand the county supervisor has a limited ability to affect this. But last night, I was driving home and I hit the pothole from hell. It was like a bomb going off. And I think, hey, this doesn't sound good, man. So I pulled over. Of course, I had a flat tire. And so right now, my car is filled with big old tires. And I'm going to pick it up when I leave here. Get a brand new tire, okay? So what can supervisors do about potholes? Oh, I'm sorry. I want to keep that.
I like the question.
Don, thank you for your question, and I'm sorry that you had to deal with that. The county is responsible for over 2,200 miles of roadway within the unincorporated county. Those are the roads that we're responsible for. If a road is within the boundaries of the city of Tucson or one of the towns, it's their responsibility. There are also state highways that run through our county. For example, State Route 77, also known as Oracle Road, is responsibility of the Arizona Department of Transportation. But in the year before I ran for the board, out of those 2,200 miles of road within the unincorporated county that are our responsibility, 70% of them were found to be in poor or failed condition. 70%. And the previous board voted unanimously, and again, it's hard to get a 5-0 vote out of the board, to put in place a program that uses a combination of local and state funds to get all of those roads up to good condition by the end of the decade. Our board has also supported that program. In fact, we infused, at my suggestion, additional funds into that program through the purchase of short-term debt during the first 2 fiscal years that we were responsible for. We were able to do that because of favorable interest rates at that time, and also because of the capacity of the road building industry to handle that. Notice that I said it's our road repair and maintenance program. There are a lot of reasons why 70% of the county's road network was considered to be in poor or failed condition in 2019. And one of those reasons is that we did not devote enough resources over the years to maintenance. That's not going to be the case moving forward. Because we front-loaded repair in the early years of the program, we're going to be able to give maintenance more time and attention. There's a terrific program available on the Department of Transportation website called See-Click Fix that you can use to report a pothole from hell, to use your term, on any county road, and they are very responsive to getting back to you on that. If it's a road within the city of Tucson, I know their Department of Transportation has something similar. I hope that was responsive to your question, Don, and thank you.
So, as a college student, I drive a 1986 Nissan 720 pickup truck. And let me tell you, I feel potholes in that. So it's a critical issue, especially when you're driving in unincorporated, more rural areas. But like Supervisor Scott said, the program was designed to front load repairs. And I know that while we see these huge potholes that are still gaping errors and areas that have been missed by those road crews, we can continue on with maintenance, we can maintain the roads that we fixed, we can invest substantially in fixing the roads that we need to fix, because Pima County has some of the worst roads in the country. And that's not really an acceptable standard for a community like ours. So, as your supervisor, I'm very committed to fixing the roads because it's one of the most common complaints that I hear. It's, what are you gonna do about the roads? How are we gonna fix this mess? My answer is always, it's, when it comes to government funding for programs like that, it is just spider web after spider web after spider web of policies, and we got this grant from this agency, and the bureaucracy is unbelievable. But it's not a standard that we can maintain, so we do need to move forward, and we do need to prioritize working on fixing our roads.
I mentioned that the program that we use uses a combination of state and local funds. In the state of Arizona, the biggest source of funding for not just local roads, but also state roads is the state gasoline tax. And we have not raised the state gasoline tax in Arizona since 1992. It is one of the lowest gas taxes in the country. And when you take a look at infrastructure throughout the state of Arizona, our infrastructure in this state was recently given a grade of D+ by a National Engineering Professional Association. We have not devoted the funds to infrastructure at the state level since the early 1990s. And that has impacts not just for your state infrastructure system, it has impacts for counties and cities as well, because counties and cities get a share of that gasoline tax. So again, it's another instance where the Arizona legislature, which has been under the control of the other party since the early 1990s, is not paying attention to the infrastructure needs of this state.
Okay, this is our final question.
Hello, my name is Ryan Mace. I wanted to thank you both for spending your time and holding this, as well as to the organizers. I've just spent some time, as we've been talking, writing down some of the negative issues facing our community. So fentanyl, homelessness, inevitable water shortage, housing crisis, state of public education, roads, rising crime, tensions between our economic industries and our ecological values, infrastructure. So my question to you two would be, what is it about Pima County currently that has you most encouraged for our future? And how do we leverage that? And be as specific as possible if you can, please. How do we leverage that into further county progress? Thank you.
Jake goes first this time.
So it's true, our county is facing a lot of issues, and I think we touched on pretty much all of them today in this debate, and the differences between Supervisor Scott and I and how we want to address them. But something that gives me so much hope is that I've had the ability to go around to some of our local high schools, like Catalina Foothills, and speak to them a little bit about my candidacy. And some of the students there afterwards came up to me and told me that they were so excited to see someone like them who was running for office, and that I was the reason that they were going to go home and register to vote. So that's really what gives me hope, is that this next generation of people, they're like me. They don't want to sit back, they don't want to take it as the song goes. They want to work. And they want to change the systems that we've established. I think in the coming years, we're going to see so many more young candidates, so my story isn't unique anymore, right? We're going to see so many more young people involved in local politics because they're tired of the systems that they don't have a say in. And that's really what gives me hope for the future of this community, is the fact that we're seeing so many more people getting into politics and getting interested in the futures. Thank you for that question.
That's something that Jake and I have in common, because the first time I ran for political office, I was 2 years younger than he is right now. And it is always a sign of hope for the future when young people take an interest in their community and want to help it to move forward. And I saw literally thousands of those examples during my career as an educator, working in our middle and high schools in Pima County. There are thousands of kids who want this to be their home when they graduate from high school, who want to start a career and raise a family in Pima County because they know what an extraordinarily special place it is. We need to give them more reasons that they are going to be able to stay here. By bringing more high-paying jobs into this community, by making sure that we are safeguarding the precious desert environment, which is one of the reasons that all of us live here, and by rallying together to take on any challenges that we confront. I don't know if any of you know this, but we were below the state and national averages during the pandemic in terms of COVID infections and COVID deaths. And I believe the reason for that is because we took care of each other. And we reached out to each other during the most extraordinary public health crisis in over a century. And that's what I see throughout our community. It's what I saw as a teacher and an administrator when I was watching parents and community members come and help schools that were serving some of the most challenged members of our community and our most precious resource, our children. And it's certainly what I see as a supervisor. We talked earlier about the Prosperity Initiative. That was the result of every jurisdiction in this county and the nonprofit community coming together to put together a policy framework to take on our greatest challenge, intergenerational poverty. So to answer your question, Ryan, I see a spirit of collaboration and cohesion and common purpose throughout Pima County that I think is absolutely our greatest, no matter what challenge it is that we're going to have to take on. Thank you very much. Sure.
5 minutes, guys? 5 minutes? 5 minutes? Oh, I don't need 5. Yeah, I don't know.
They will have several minutes.
A series of minutes.
People are tired, Mike. Well, thank you to each one of you for coming to this event. Your attendance speaks not only to your support for our party, but your engagement in our democratic processes. Curiosity about and interest in those who seek your vote is always important, but it's especially vital now, for reasons we know all too well. Few things give me more joy than to get back into our schools and talk with young people about the roles county government plays in their lives. Earlier in my term, I was speaking in the auditorium at a K-12 charter school. Believe me, it is quite a challenge to describe what the county and the Board of Supervisors do in ways that are understandable to elementary, middle, and high school students at the same time, but I think I was pulling it off. When it came time for questions, I called on a young man who I later found out was in 3rd grade. He knew that political candidates run for office, so he was referring to us as runners. His very pointed and poignant question to me was, why do all the runners hate each other? Years old, to express so directly how divisive and ugly our politics can be was stunning and saddening. To be honest, I don't even recall what my response was. I am certain it was not commensurate with the significance of his question. Since that day, I have made 2 commitments both to myself and to the people I represent. The first one is to try to remember what I also tried to keep in mind as a father and an educator, that our kids are always watching us and that they pay much closer attention to what we do than what we say. The second is to try not to say or do anything that contributes to the polarization and toxicity that third grade boy described with his question. There is a page on my campaign website that recounts this story. I tell it often, especially at town halls. There are always expressions and nods of recognition from other adults, especially older adults, whenever I share it. Frankly, one of the reasons I repeat this story so frequently is as a reminder to myself of those 2 commitments. They can be easy to forget, especially in heated moments. If I am granted another term as your supervisor, know that I will do my best to be true to those pledges. And with regard to the substance of those pledges, you saw an example today of the kind of reasoned, mature, substantive dialogue that should and can occur in our community. Thank you again for being here. Thank you, Jake. And thank you all for the honor of serving our community.
So we've heard a lot today. We've heard a lot about what separates Rex and I policy-wise. I'm somebody who every day gets up in the morning. And although so many people ask me how I do my job, I do it. And I do it because every day I see hope. Hope in places that you could not imagine. Hope in the eyes of somebody that we just pulled out of an overdose on the streets. Hope in the eyes of a woman who we just got a house for after she had to leave her abusive husband with her children in the middle of the night. Our community, when we come together, we are so strong. In my experience working on the streets, working up front and close with every single issue that we've talked about, whether it's fentanyl, homelessness, the jail, I am there. I am talking to the people that we want to serve, and I am actively implementing changes within our community. As your supervisor, I'll continue that commitment. I'll be out on the street, distributing drug testing kits, Narcan, doing whatever I can to protect people. I will chain myself to a saguaro in order to stop the Copper World project. Because that's what representatives do. They represent the people. Not from a high office, but they meet the people of our communities where they are. And that's what I've spent my brief career doing. That's what I've given my life to, is serving our community. And I hope that you will do me the honor of voting for me in this election so that I can continue to serve our community and meet people where they are at the level where they are. So thank you all for coming. Thank you to Supervisor Scott. Thank you to the DPT and Tucson Attorney.
Thank you for coming, everyone. My name is Mike Bryan. I'm the Program Director for Democrats of Greater Tucson. We did promise you networking, and we have this venue until 5 o'clock. So I just want to remind you all that there's coffee and water in the back, and our candidates are going to be here to talk to you one-on-one, and we won't start kicking you out until at least 4:30. So please stay and enjoy, and thank you for coming.
Hey.
My name's Tracy. I volunteered to be part of the video production group.
Oh, very good to meet you.
Yeah.
I'm not really like an official. I mean, this is the gentleman who's been doing it for the last few years. Thank you.
I use it's there is probably the low-level go-to, but I don't feel like you know which is but it's not expensive particularly. I think there is reimbursement.
Well, yeah, I'm on the west side, so I'm part of the story. But yeah, great job.
It is fairly short. I mean, my real background.
Stop us?
Yeah, let's go